Hello again, and welcome to MSKain's gaming channel, where now we are going to continue my Final Fantasy III speedrun. We are going to continue with Terra, Edgar, and Bannon scenario. Finish out the rafting trip. Now, if you haven't seen this before, if you didn't watch the first episode, you should go watch the first episode so you know really what's going on. But this is a glitchless 100% run, but it's also a Kappa % run, which I give it that title because it's a joke. It's not serious because even though I'm not using any glitches, I am using the emulator's in-game Game Genie hacks to change the starting stats and starting equipment of my characters. So they have basically the best equipment in the game just so I can show it off because it's stuff that's hard to get normally. And so it trivializes most of the game, hence it's Kappa. But I went through the first good hour or so of the game. I'm doing generally mostly speedrun stuff, but I have mapped out things a little bit differently because of how some battles are easier for me to do and are worth more because of the fact that I can easily win the battles and do other things. So right now we're trying to go back to Narsh in order to get this Esper that was found here in the first place and see if we can communicate with it, possibly get it to help us against the Empire. But the people of Narsh still identify us as threats, and so if we try to go in normally, they'll kick us out. So we just skip that cutscene because it isn't necessary. And now we get to see the first use of the smoke bomb to run away. We picked up smoke bombs at the very end of last session in Sabin scenario. The first place you can get them is from Nicaea, the last town he visits. And so thanks to these, they're really good for a speedrun because they let you skip battles that are bad, that, you know, just aren't worth anything, which is most of the battles at this point. The ones of the river weren't bad, so I fought them, but these are generally not worth the time and effort, but first classes aren't too bad. Oh, jeez. That wasted quite a bit of time that didn't need to be wasted, because he took just little enough. But anyway, the key point especially is something that comes out when you're running this, as I mentioned kind of last time. There are certain battles that are worth fighting and some that aren't worth fighting, and you kind of have to figure that out as you're doing mapping when you map a route of a speedrun. So I'm picking my battles carefully, and the ones that aren't worth anything to me I try to run away from. Now, I'm demonstrating an incredible ability to hold the A button, because that's actually all you need to do to get past that. So normally you'd have to follow the light, that's what they want you to do, in order to avoid getting in any fights, but by holding the A button, you're given a second chance if you go off point and they surround you with this light, and you have to click the golden one. You have to press at the same time it comes, which is kind of hard to get the timing down, but for some reason if you just hold the A button it works automatically, so that wasn't skill or anything of the sort, that was super easy. And this is a very, very short scenario, especially when you have smoke bombs and are as powerful as I am, as it's almost over already. It's one of the reasons why smoke bomb realizes it. Now, one of the things I forgot last time was I had 2 pairs of sprint shoes on my characters there. And I don't need 2 pairs of sprint shoes, but Locke needs sprint shoes up ahead, so now the only opportunity I have to get them is to remove them from Terra, which kind of slows that portion down a bit, but I'll make up that time on Locke's scenario. If I had remembered to remove it before, I wouldn't have had to do anything here. Otherwise, since everybody has their own equipment, it's not a very big deal. Locke, of course, is the first character to have all his equipment removed as soon as he leaves your party right before the rafting trip. It takes them all. And it does this at various points in the game, as I mentioned before, in order so that your characters can make use of other equipment on characters you might not get for a while. And generally it's a good thing, but with this particular run I'm doing, it's actually one of the banes of this run, because with the glitches, with the hacks that I'm doing, I can equip any equipment on any slot on any character. I can have them start with that. But once it gets removed, I can't put it back on. So that's why I'm generally just doing equipment that they can use, but there are a few instances where I'm doing interesting things. Because of all the equipment I've got, normally you'd steal clothes from the merchant and go through the house, but for me it's actually quicker to... Oh, blast. This is bad, actually. That wasted a lot of time. So normally you would steal from the merchant, and that would, because you can't take him, but because of my equipment I can, so that would normally be faster, except that I forgot to. I did a major choke there, forgetting to equip Locke, even though I remembered to put his relics on. Whew, I got to slip through here this time, though. So I can just run right across the bridge. Now normally, there's some interesting things about Locke's trip here. Whenever you fight a merchant, they always attack first, regardless of what your speed is. You can't really instant surprise them either. Interestingly, you can't get a preemptive attack. So you're supposed to steal various clothes and use it to sneak around town, but there are a couple of things in the game which we're not sure if they're intentional or not. But because one of the other people you can steal from are green-suited soldiers, and there are certain soldiers of the brown-suited soldiers, so if you talk to them while you're wearing the green trooper's uniform, they will move out of the way for you. And it's the way you're supposed to get across here. See, that guy's green, you can do it. Because that guy right there is the one you talk to as a green-suited soldier, and needs to get out of the way, but this invisible bridge here allows you to just get across easily. Since I've already wasted a bit of time, I'm wasting a bit more to show off these points. So this guy will only let you go if you're a merchant, which is why you have to get it normally. And so in order to get to the secret passage to the other side of town, you have to give the cider to this old man. He's forgotten the password, but luckily we know it. We'll see if I mess up this time and give the wrong password. Nope. Okay. If you actually do play this game normally, casually, and you explore things, you find out that during your first visit here that this rich man is writing a letter to the Empire to help them capture the town. This is his house, and you catch him in the act of doing it, though there's nothing you can do about it. All clocks in the game, or most of them, have elixirs in it. We're not sure why, but it's one of the neat things about this game. There are a couple of clocks that don't coming up here. So now I'm trying to sneak out of South Figaro. I'm going to make use of his house because he has a secret room. There's no music in here so that you can hear the draft, because this room is always drafty. And this goes down into his secret lair. There are a whole lot of secrets here and secret rooms with a whole bunch of items. And a couple of valuable ones are right here. Not really valuable for use, but they're worth several thousand gold pieces, so I can sell them for to help fund my other needs. And now we're going to meet our next character, Celis. And like Poexel, I'm going to name her after one of the speedrunners that got me into speedrunning, since Final Fantasy VI, Poexel, and Essentia's SGDQ 2014 run was my first introduction to speedrunning. In honor of them, I've named Locke Poexel, and Celis will be named Essentia. The other name I could give her for amusement is Kutan, because of if you use the glitch to skip Celis and she turns into the Moogle Kutan, that's another joke in the speedrunning community. And she's the last character who can use swords, so she has the same equipment set up as Poexel and Terra and Edgar, and she also has a couple of really powerful relics that are the best relics for spellcasters. Not so much for this portion of the game as it is for later. It's going to be towards the middle of the game and onward where her relics are really going to come in handy. Until then, she doesn't need them quite so much. There's a couple of interesting things here. If you decide not to change clothes back, she'll ask, like, you'd come in here as a merchant normally then, and she'd say, ask what you're trying to peddle down here, and Locke's like, oh, I forgot to change my clothes. Sometime maybe I ought to go ahead and show that off, because that's an amusing little scene. But Celis was one of the generals of the Empire, but when she heard that they were, of all the horrible things they were doing here, especially about Kefka poisoning Doma, which we saw last time, she tried to rebel against them, but got lucked up for it. And then Poexel found her here. Stealing is wrong. Yeah. What have we been doing so far, then? It's interesting that it gives you that option to say no, because stealing is wrong. Usually don't get a whole lot, but it doesn't matter. That room is a save point if you need it. We really don't. A couple of reasons. There's some money we can collect here. That clock is not ticking, but it's ticking rather. That other chest has nothing in it, so we don't grab it. we wind this clock. There are a couple of kids in this house as well that actually give clues as to what we're supposed to be doing, interestingly, and that'll come into play here and later on as well. If you go and talk to them, we don't need to, of course. It's not necessary, but it's hints if, kind of obscure hints, but nevertheless hints if you're playing the game casually and you can't figure out what to go. They talk about this nursery rhyme that they did called Wind the Clock, Wind the Clock, which is what they're encouraging us to do, like we had to do there. Again, you would really never know anything about it. There's a really good treasure room over there too, but it doesn't have anything that's worth any money or is really valuable to us, so we're skipping most of it. Earrings here are an extremely valuable relic in a normal speedrun because they increase magical power and you normally don't have access to so many hero rings like my characters have, which do that and physical attack. But they're still worth a bit of money, so they're worth some of the most money. That iron armor was kind of unnecessary too, but it's just always one of the things I grab because I do. I should try and root it out, but I just never... I see the chest and I run and grab it. It's all I can do to try grabbing some other things. Really, as I've kind of mentioned before in my other videos, if you've watched them, I'm very much a junior speedrunner. I play games. I'm not even a casual runner. I'm actually hardcore when it comes to these role-playing games. I'm a 100% completion kind of guy, which is why for my first speedrun I'm doing this Kappa percent, because it's glitchless 100%, which I like because I like to get everything or almost everything that's, not ridiculous to get, like all the rages. And I also like to collect all the items and do all the subquests and stuff, and there's a whole bunch that I'm skipping because they're not necessary still, but there are a lot of items that you normally wouldn't be able to get in a speedrun as well, and I'm skipping those. Or rather, I've hacked the game so I have them anyway, so I can show them off because they are really cool and you'll never see them otherwise. Oh, I almost missed the one important chest. Is she not running yet? Amazing. You may notice that Essentia has an ability called X Magic. Let's get this out of the way. That's because of the gem box, which is another thing you never see in normal speedruns. Gem box is really awesome, allows you to cast 2 spells, which is very powerful, especially when you have a lot of magic. You don't normally see it, but gem box is going to be super important for making this run as smooth as it is at the ends of the game, and you'll see it in action. It's really, really awesome. There's a couple of options we have here. That wasn't necessary either, but it's just one of those things I do. There are a couple of options to do this fight. I can use that Thunder Rod I just picked up to win this fight easily, but I don't really need to because of how powerful my characters are again. So I want to save it for later when it's actually is more powerful and it will be more useful. And that's it. Power the Illumina even without a Pearl proc in action. And, once again, it's the ultimate sword, but it's only doing that much damage. Levels will make them do far, far more damage. Because the thing about it, if you were listening to my rant last time about how stats work and how stats aren't as overpowered as you may think, well, it's not to say that they aren't. You can make a big difference by getting a lot, but it's rather exponentially based on your level, in a way. It's kind of a domino effect on its own. A few stats at low levels don't make a lot of difference. Even a lot of stats don't make as much difference as you'd think, but the difference between using, say, a Dirk and the Illumina at level 50 is absolutely enormous. That's thousands of points of damage, and that's where the high stats that I have are really going to come in play at those later portions of the game. With my spells and rods and stuff, I'll be doing close to maximum damage with a lot of abilities because of high stats. Not totally all of my attacks, but quite a few of them. So now the party's all arrived in Narsh with all of our extra members. We've gathered, try and meet back up. Everyone's happy to see each other alive and hear these stories, but the Elder of Narsh is not very sympathetic to the returners' plight at first. He thinks we don't want to resist the Empire. They'll just tear us apart, but if we, give in to them, maybe we'll be safe. But Celis has brought with her plans that knowledge of the plans of the Empire. They're planning to attack Narsh right now. Of course, Cyan, whose city was just decimated by the Empire, recognizes General Celis and thinks that she's an Imperial spy. She's an enemy. They have to fight her, but Terra's sympathetic to Celis because she was also an Imperial soldier. This revelation gives Edgar the chance to declare that, well, the Empire is evil, not all of its citizens are. But all this happy reunion and drama and of meeting people is brought to a halt when the Empire cometh. And there he is again, Mr. Whooping Crane Laugh himself.
Exterminate everyone! Idiot! Read my lips! Dispose of any who oppose us!
Kefka's dialogue is rather interesting, and there's a lot of people who make fun of the dialogue translation for the Super Nintendo Final Fantasy games. But Kefka is honestly hard to translate because most of his talk was swearing, and 99% of your video games, especially Nintendo games in the 90s, were supposed to be kids to adult, or everyone, as they later changed that rating to. They didn't want, any of that in there, so they had to come up with words for him on the fly. And while it was he isn't swearing anymore, it makes him a very, very memorable character. So now we're starting an event really similar to... I'm going to safety save here because I can very much mess this up. So while I can say no to tutorials. But so now we're here and I'm equipping a very specific group that I need. And if I do this right, I can avoid all the fights and I can get to Kefka very easily and take him out without fighting any of the other enemies, but I could very easily mess things up here. I have this very specific party because of what I can earn. Okay, let's see. Don't need that. I can actually make use of these right now. Okay, good enough. Don't need any sprint shoes on these characters because, oops. Again, I'm messing this up badly. Alrighty, just about time here. I have one more chance to mess up badly. I did too early again. I always do that. Okay, finally the battle with Kefka. Normally you'd want to try and kill him before his third turn because he has a chance of casting Ice 2, which can devastate your party at this level, but with the four characters with the Illumina make him run away very, very quickly. Now I have a lot of things, time I'm going to have to recover because of my mess-ups there. Oh well. This is, if you've been disappointed so far, this is where things will get a little bit interesting again. Because of a little-known trick in the game that's going to be coming up. Here we gather at the Esper, and Terra's going to try and communicate it because it reacts to her, and the reaction is not going to be good from what we can tell. What is it? Illusion of power. There's some kind of reaction. What am I feeling? Who am I? An Esper. I can feel its mind. I love this line. Tina, step away from the Esper. You don't know what you're doing. And now she goes Super Saiyan. Or something. And Super Saiyan Terra can fly. Yes, fly. And she glows like sparkles. You know, just think about this for a minute. Think of how big this world is. You know, it's supposed to be an Earth-sized world, and look at how much ground she's covering. Like, this is some pretty incredible speed. Now, not to mention also that her sprite is as big as the cities, you know, but still. Obviously, these video games were not made for kind of realistic scaling. So, our big hero that we wanted to recruit for the returners has flown the coop. And we decide that it's very important to try and go after her and get her back. Of course, the Empire is still after the Esper and after Narshir, so we decide we have to split up our forces, which is the usual role-playing game, you know, reasoning to force you to split up your party because we have too many members to take at once. Because they want you to have all these characters, and they find uses for them in this game, which is pretty neat, but still, we have to split the party up. So I'm going to split it exactly in half. Normally you'd want to take 4 characters, but I think I can get by with just 3. We need, so we're going to take the 3 Illuminas that are left. Although it's not for the Illumina that we're actually doing this. Mm-hmm. We're going to give Experience Egg to these 2 because they're a little more important. Sid's just going to hang in the background. He's also higher level anyway. We're going to collect some gear here. This is one of the places that's got a lot of items that are worth a lot of money, and this will fund my first shopping trip in the game pretty much on its own. That Thief Knife normally on a speedrun would be something you'd equip because it lets Locke do damage and potentially steal at the same time. There's another reason you can do that too, but it's a little out of the way. Normally I'd pick that up too. I'll talk about that more when I get to it. But so we need to go south to Figaro and use its burrowing ability to go beyond the mountains in the west to Kohlingen. This is another staple of RPGs. Certain kinds of vehicles that appear at certain points in the game to pass unpassable obstacles, so that you can't get ahead of the game. This is actually very important in a game like Final Fantasy III here, because they, you know, and it's similar with a lot of games of the era that don't have a lot of programming power. They, the game doesn't keep perfect track of everything that's going on, so if you can find ways to skip out of sequence, you can actually just blow this game to pieces. There's a glitch that you can use around the floating continent, for instance, to give yourself the airship early on in the game, pretty much at any point in the game. So you could do it, for instance, right after Terra and Locke leave Figaro, and then fly over to Zozo and skip this entire portion of the game that I've been through so far, and have Terra meet Terra and Zozo and other similar things. And each of those really can throw the game out of whack, and have a party of Moogles and all sorts of crazy stuff can happen. But because they designed the game, they didn't realize in the game it's hard to code all of these things happening when you have millions of players who play the game later and figure them all out. If Guile were here, he would run off at this point. And also you could sleep here and have a cutscene that would get them together, but we don't want that because it takes a lot of time, so we'd never have it. Thief Knife doesn't sell for much. It's good for throwing later, though. See, that doesn't work very much. No, I don't want to sell that. Hyper Wrist, I can get rid of. This ring. Earrings. Wall Ring and Sneak Ring are both worth selling. Those could all have uses in a normal game, but no, blast. I always do that too. I don't really need any Phoenix Downs. Let's get a bunch of those, so maybe a little more. Okay, that'll get me through the game. Might seem really scared of zombies, since I bought a lot of Revivifies. But these are the last two tools I'm going to be buying, because they're the last two that are useful to me. Normally I like getting all the tools, but some of them take quite a bit of time, so I probably will pick up the air anchor, but that's going to be it. So this next thing that's going to happen, instead of heading up north to the old man's place and picking up a hero ring... Oh goodness, that's actually a bad bit of time waster. These guys are worth a little bit of experience, so I thought I'd fight them. But now, as you may know if you've explored everything casually, you come in here to the cafe at Cullingen, and Shadow's here, but normally he just tells you to leave him alone. However, we have only 3 characters. We have an empty slot, so he says for 3,000 gold he'll join the party. Now, if you were watching the previous speedrun, you know that I gave Shadow the Moogle Charm. So enemies are afraid of Shadow the Ninja, and they totally leave him alone. And he still has that equipped. He has not yet had all of his equipment torn from his body, so that means I can make this long walk without having any encounters. Which you could normally do by traveling up north to the old man's hut and picking up the crazy old man far at the north at the dragon-shaped landmass you can see on my map there. He has a hero ring in his hut, and he also has a Moogle forest, or a Chocobo forest, excuse me, right next to him. So you can take a Chocobo and ride it down here. But it's quicker just to walk once you pick up Shadow and you're not going to get any encounters. So I can make this long trek. Now, Shadow is also can be used to get a weird soft lock. If you decide to take only Gao and Shadow with you, and then you can actually go through a long portion of the game, go back to the river raft through the returner hideout. You can then jump in the serpent. You can go out to the Veld, and Gao can leap on the Veld, and that will leave Shadow as the only member of your party. If you then go to Narsh and walk into Narsh with Shadow, he'll decide to leave the party. And if you've been paying attention, since Gao is the only member of your party, you will, after Shadow leaves, you have a complete party of 0. And the game soft locks, because you can't really do anything. I'm going to pick up a tincture here, because that mana might prove valuable to me later, since I have very little mana, and I'm using up a whole lot on Sealess, thanks to the power of the Illumina. Tincture is actually one of the more valuable items in the game for me, and it's probably something I really should have bought some in the shop. But I didn't. Maybe I'll get a chance to up ahead here. Normally you'd pick up a Fire Knuckle there for Sabin, very useful, but I don't need it, so I'm just going to fight Dataluma, and if, you know, once again, because I have Shadow, I didn't get any encounters, and one of the most annoying places to get encounters in this whole game. I just make sure I don't throw away an Illumina, because that would be doom. It's a little bit slow with since he gets off his heels, but they're not going to do much to save him, really. Safe doesn't do anything against throws, for instance. If I get lucky and I proc a Pearl at any of these points, this makes the battle go much quicker. Yeah, Essentia is out of mana already. There we go. That's why I picked up the Air Lancet and the Thief Knife, just to throw for this battle. That was Dataluma. And that's the entire use of Shadow in the first half. Let's grab some more money. Now here's something interesting. Because of how the game is scripted, the characters in the game are placed in a certain order. And that order is the same order you see when you're building your party. And the order actually goes Terra, Locke, Cyan, Shadow, Edgar, Sabin, Silas, Mog, I believe. No, Strago, Realm, then Mog, then Setzer. Gao, then Setzer. Gao, Setzer, and then Gogo and Yumaro. Those are the orders of the 14 characters that they're officially put into the system in all the codified data. And some of these scenes go by the characters that are in order. Notice that a lot of this is generic speech. There's one line here from Poexel talking about his grandma. His grandma is the fountain of all wisdom. She says a bunch of things that you hear later on as well. And Silas has a line later when they talk about the Magic Research Facility, but all the rest of it is in quotations, meaning it's independent of what characters you bring. And so the characters you bring affect... They make actions and they're placed around here, not in the order they are in the party, but the order they are in the system. So having Shadow in the party, because he's higher in the order than any of these other characters, he actually is the one who gets the next most involved to Locke, who's the first character. If I was to do this without, say, if I decided to bring Sabin instead of Locke, or Gao instead of Locke, it would actually be Shadow doing the most interaction there. He'd be in Locke's place. And it's kind of interesting, the points in the game where you see this happen. So I only recently discovered this trick where you can bring Shadow. See, he's helping Locke put Terra in bed, for instance, and he's going to have a little line of his own here that sounds a lot more heartfelt than you'd expect from the mercenary assassin. That's just one of those interesting things you discover. And it's one of the reasons that I really like doing the speedrun and wanted to post it and everything, even though a lot of people probably, you know, don't respect me for this horribly, you know, broken, cheap game. "We have to do something," says Shadow. Good to know you care. But, you know, just these things I'm doing are so unusual that, you know, probably people have never seen them before, so here we are. So we have this very lengthy cutscene where, Terra is not an Esper, Rama says. He's actually something quite different. But Rama here is an Esper who fled from the Empire and their Magitech research facility. He explains how the only way that Esper's powers can truly be transferred is by perishing and turning into Magicite like that. And he decides that, like those others, he's going to turn himself into Magicite and give you his power so that you can rescue his friends who are in the Magitech research facility. And there might be one there who can help Terra come to grips with who she is, because her knowledge of her identity, or lack of knowledge of her identity, has caused her to go berserk. So we need to find this Esper down south in the Empire to help her. And we get our first Espers here. And these Magicite will allow everybody in the party to learn spells. It's one of the great things about Final Fantasy III's gameplay in general, especially compared to others, is that each character has their own unique traits and stuff. Although not as much when I'm giving them all infinite item, you know, to ultimate weapons and all the stats we need. But you can customize them as you like with espers and stuff. Now, normally you'd skip Chiron for several reasons. Because Chiron or Kirin is a mostly useless esper. Doesn't teach any great abilities and teaches them very slowly. There are a few things you would need from it you can get more easily from other espers, and it takes time and takes up a space in your inventory that actually save a lot of time. But I am trying to do this 100%, meaning all espers, all characters when we go to face Kefka, 14 characters and all 22 espers, I believe. So I'm picking up Kirin as well, plus I'll make some use of it. I don't care, I'll equip it. So the party has shown up again. Apparently Narsh isn't really all that important, that everyone can just follow us here. We get to divide up the party again. Silas knows the Empire, so she's going to go there. And for story purposes, Locke decides that he's going to go with her because he wants an inside look at it. Also, obviously, he's got thoughts for the girl. Junpei says there's no need for me to remain with you. And off he goes. After saying, we have to do something. Okay. So now I have no more, because Junpei left after that bit, he served his purpose. He gave us no encounters in Zozo. So now we have to find a way to the southern continent. So we're going to go to Jidor, which we've totally bypassed, but it's apparently going to have some useful things for us. Alrighty, I equipped sprint shoes on Puexel earlier because I needed to. Now I'm going to give the usual to him. I'll be fighting battles for a little bit. Nah, this one isn't worth it. That one I can preemptively run away easily. Some of these battles I might fight because I need to start collecting magic points. Not, of course, I do need to equip some espers for that as well. She won't learn anything useful from that in the time period. Scan is useless, but if you're interested, Kirin is the only way to learn Scan, if you really want that ability. That's the one reason you'd really need to pick up Kirin, otherwise. Once again, you know, regardless of how high your magic power is, some abilities are very weak, and your first level attack spells have an extremely low, as it were, magic power, battle power to increase your magic damage. But Edgar's Flash is much better. That's another not worth it one. You're worried I'm going to run out of smoke bombs? I probably will, but I'll have a better replacement that I can purchase on this route before then. So I'm going to be putting this up quick here in a minute. Rather, I'm going to go ahead and end part 2. If you're striving for ultimate efficiency, if you can easily slip around to the top here and talk to him, you won't do that slow walk around him. But it's kind of hard to do very easily. So with this not very responsive controller, I'm not going to waste the effort trying. Same with this letter here. Interestingly, you need to run around to the other side. It's rather annoying that they did it as such. But here, so we've come to Jidor. And here in the house of the richest man, Auser, we've met the impresario, who's in charge of the opera house down south. And he's in a tizzy, especially when he thinks that Silas is Maria, because the Silas apparently looks just like Maria, his star opera singer. And he's in a tizzy because Jinx here, who would normally be called Setzer, naming him after my best friend and fellow YouTube channeler, shoutouts to JynxBlack13. He is the owner of the world's only airship, and he's in love with Maria and wants to kidnap her and make her his wife. And because he's a flamboyant man, he's planning to kidnap her while she's in the middle of the opera. And the impresario is worried that a star performer is going to be kidnapped, so that's definitely not a good thing. So it saves only a little bit of time, but I'm going to go ahead and pick up a chocobo. I know how to ride a chocobo, but since I've never ridden one from a shop before, they have to give me the whole spiel here. It's a rather short run, and I could use a bit of experience, but it's not worth that much, so better just save time with this. So as I say, I'm putting it up here, and so that I'll have a fresh voice later on when I'm ready to play some more for the Opera House. So even though this was a shorter part, I hope that this too was enjoyable, as you got to see the power of Shadow with Moogle Charm in action to skip us through a nasty portion of the game. And next time we'll have the singing sensations of the opera, and look forward to it. See you all next time.